Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The small town of Millfield, nestled between rolling hills and dense woods, seemed an unlikely setting for a tragedy. With its picturesque main street, lined with quaint shops and friendly faces, it was a place where people left their front doors unlocked and neighbors shared homemade casseroles on a Sunday afternoon. Yet, beneath the surface of this idyllic community, darkness was brewing. On an unassuming Tuesday in mid-April, the tranquility of Millfield was shattered. The morning sun poured through the fall leaves like golden syrup, illuminating the local high school where students, unaware of the impending storm, gathered eagerly for spring activities. But the serenity was soon disrupted by the shrill wail of sirens slicing through the crisp air. It was at the edge of town that a woman's body was found. Dressed in a pale blue dress, she lay crumpled near an abandoned barn, her lifeless figure cradled by the long grasses. The sight was so familiar to residents, a place where children once played and couples sought solace during summer evenings. But now, it had transformed into a harrowing crime scene, a stark reminder that evil can infiltrate even the safest havens. As news spread, the fabric of Millfield unraveled. Shock turned to fear, then to suspicion. Everyone was on edge, scrupulously examining their neighbors' actions and whereabouts. The jovial town gatherings quickly morphed into whispered conversations, as each person began to wonder, who could have done this? And more pressing, who might be next? The victim. The victim was identified as Clara Thompson, a local librarian known for her radiant smile and tireless dedication to her community. At 34, she had become a heartbeat for Millfield, organizing reading programs for children and hosting weekend book clubs for adults. Clara's warm demeanor and infectious laughter drew people to her, making the fallout of her death all the more profound. As investigators pieced together her last known movements, they painted a vivid picture of Clara as a diligent librarian who cherished simplicity. She lived in a cozy historic home filled with books and framed family photos, a testament to her unwavering affection for her late grandmother, who had been her guiding light after a turbulent childhood. Her evenings were often spent tending to her garden, growing vibrant flowers that would later adorn the stories she told to eager children in the library. But beneath the surface of her peaceful existence, Clara was not devoid of struggle. Close friends later revealed that she was grappling with the aftermath of a recent divorce. Her husband had left the town for work in the city, and Clara had been busy rebuilding her life. She appeared resolute, yet a lingering sadness sometimes danced in her expressive eyes, an echo of the painful memories drifting just beneath her smiles. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered Clara had recently confided in her best friend Emily about a strange man lurking around the library. Though she had dismissed it as paranoia when she shared it over coffee, the concern had crept back into Emily's thoughts, planting seeds of unease that somberly hinted at the reality her friend had faced in the days leading up to her tragic end. The crime scene. When the forensics team arrived at the abandoned barn on the outskirts of Millfield, they draped the area in a quiet urgency. It was a scene that would haunt the community for years to come, a stark contrast to the peaceful memories of laughter and sunshine that residents associated with this very place. They noted the remnants of Clara's presence. A discarded paperback novel lay half buried in leaves, its spine cracked, hinting that she had been reading there, perhaps seeking solace in its pages. The air was thick with tension as the detectives moved carefully, methodically. Clara's pale blue dress fluttered slightly in the breeze, its delicate fabric now stained with the harsh reality of her end. In the fading twilight, the barn loomed ahead, its wooden boards warped with age and neglect. Inside, the scent of damp earth mingled with rust, and shadows cast elongated forms throughout the desolate space. As sunlight slanted through the broken windows, it illuminated the haunting search for clues. A bloodstain on a dusty wooden beam caught the eye of a junior officer, a harbinger of aggression that was both alarming and heartbreaking. There were no signs of a struggle nearby, no overturned items, but the collected evidence spoke volumes. A single shoe print, considerably larger than Clara's petite foot, led away from the scene of dirt and mud, betraying an unknown figure's retreat. Nearby, a shattered watch lay hidden in the grass, its shattered face forever frozen at 6:47 p.m., the exact time Clara had planned to leave work that evening. The detectives exchanged glances, realizing they were not just tracking a killer. They were unraveling the final moments of a woman's life that had been venerated by a town she had adored. The crushing weight of what it meant to take a life hovered in the air, mingling with the dust and shadows of forgotten memories. Threads woven into the fabric of Millfield that could never be repaired. The early investigation. As the sun rose over Millfield, the town's disbelief morphed into a growing sense of urgency. The local police department quickly established a command center at the library where Clara had spent so much of her life. It was here that Detective Mark Lewis, a seasoned investigator with over a decade of experience, began to dissect the mystery surrounding her death. He called in the officers to relay what they had learned so far, involving Clara's family, friends, and acquaintances in the investigation to paint a fuller picture of her life. Emily, Clara's closest confidante, was one of the first to be interviewed. She sat across from Detective Lewis, her hands trembling, recounting Clara's concerns about the man she had spotted near the library. Detective Lewis paused, scribbling notes. Did she describe him in any way? He probed gently, understanding that even the smallest detail could be crucial. Emily recalled the man's disheveled appearance, mentioning something unsettling in his ice and intensity that had sent chills down her spine. She had urged Clara to be cautious, but with a return to full-scale living after the divorce, Clara had brushed it off as simple anxiety. As days passed, the confirmation of Clara's final phone call sent alarms reverberating through the investigation. The last call made from her phone was to a number that did not belong to anyone she knew. A late-night call that went unanswered. Detective Lewis scrutinized the billing records, hoping it would yield a lead, while the technical team worked fervently to retrieve her digital footprint. Each discovery added layers to the narrative, revealing an intricate web of connections in a town where everyone thought they knew everyone else. Tensions escalated in Millfield as fear rippled through the community, prompting individuals to band together, yet suspicion festered just beneath the surface. Neighbors exchanged wary glances, whispering about those who had dropped from sight or moved through town with unusual haste. Detective Lewis felt the pressure mounting, knowing that the heart of Millfield beat on a knife's edge, with each day bringing more uncertainty and the masked predator still lurking in the shadow. The dead ends. As the investigation progressed, cracks began to show in the enthusiasm of the Millfield team. The initial fervor that accompanied Clara's death soon turned to frustration, bordering on despair. Detective Lewis paced his small office, the walls heavy with lists of potential suspects. But each lead arrived at a dead end. The mysterious phone number from Clara's last call yielded no results. And after several attempts to trace its origin, it was confirmed as unregistered and likely disposably a tactic used by those wishing to remain hidden. In the town cafe, where patrons shuffled in with anxious glances and hushed tones, their coffee began to taste bitter, tainted by fear and uncertainty. Witness statements ranged from odd to utterly confused. Several townspeople recalled seeing Clara walking near the library with a man. But no one shared the same description. Vague utterances of a tired husband, a flirtatious regular, and a stranger passing through frayed the yarn of Clara. Each statement only deepened the fog that enveloped them. Yet, Lewis found himself sifting through discrepancies like a fisherman pulling tangled nets from the water as soon as he thought he'd found something. It slipped away, leaving him adrift. Meanwhile, Clara's family arrived to collect her belongings after the autopsy. Her sister, Rachel, expressed disbelief and dismay, head buried in her hands as she recounted Clara's passion for life. Ironically, it was her enthusiasm for reading that brought forth the chilling question. Could someone from the literary circle she engaged with turn violent? The thought gnawed at Rachel, and she implored Detective Lewis to examine the library's patrons more closely. Yet, just as they looked into possible connections to the book note, the nod to a character turned into another frustrating puzzle piece, as the friendship between Clara and the other regulars appeared solid and selfless. Each figure who stepped forward seemed like a brick wall, clouding the efforts to piece together a timeline that could explain the night of her death. The investigation felt like grasping at smoke while Clara remained a light to many. The darkness that enveloped her end was proving more complex than anyone could have imagined. A break in the case. As the days turned to weeks, the weight of Clara Thompson's murder hung heavily over Millfield, smothering the once vibrant town in a shroud of dread. However, just when hope seemed dim, a breakthrough emerged like a flicker of light through the storm clouds. Detective Lewis received a call from a local man named Marcus, who claimed to have seen something peculiar the night Clara went missing. His voice was shaky, as if he were recalling ghosts that haunted his mind. Lewis quickly arranged a meeting at a nearby diner, where the aroma of fried food clashed with the tension crackling in the air. Marcus, a stocky man in his 30s, fidgeted as he recounted his story. "I was driving back from my shift at the garage," he began, his brow furrowed with anxiety. "I took a shortcut past the library, and that's when I saw Clara was with a guy and he didn't look nice. They were arguing. I thought she was just upset." His voice trailed off, a frown forming as he grasped the implications of his own words. "Do you recognize him? Can you describe him?" Detective Lewis leaned closer, desperate for details that could kindle the investigation back to life. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Tall, scruffy, maybe wearing a leather jacket. I remember his eyes intense and wild, like he was a bit unhinged. Lewis scribbled furiously, his heart racing. With this new information, they could revisit other witness accounts and delve deeper into the library's registers for anyone matching Marcus's description. After the meeting, he tasked officers with searching through surveillance footage from local establishments. scouring grainy images for any hints of the man who had clouded Clara's last moments. With renewed purpose, the burgeoning leads began to crystallize. The recollections shared amongst the townsfolk, some seeming inconsequential, were now weaving together a tapestry that might finally reveal the shadows lurking behind Clara's death. A photo identification may soon turn into the key to unlocking the mystery that had gripped Millfield so tightly, breathing life back into the investigation that had momentarily dulled in the wake of despair. The suspect. The renewed energy within the Millfield Police Department bore tangible results. As surveillances were reviewed, then cross-referenced with community tips, a name began to surface. The man described by Marcus, a tall figure with scruffy hair and an air of volatility, was identified as Jake Morton, a recent addition to the town whose reputation had quickly turned sour, known for his love of craft beer and late-night karaoke. Morton had been seen mingling with regulars at the brewhouse, but remained aloof, often teetering on the edge of social acceptability. When Detective Lewis pulled Morton's criminal record, a chilling pattern emerged. Incidents of harassment and petty theft formed a disturbing background that spoke to his temperament. While the charges had never escalated to violence, there was an unmistakable sense of volatility associated with his past. The detective knew that the pieces of Clara's murder were beginning to come together, yet apprehension loomed over him. He couldn't shake the thought of exposing Millfield to yet another layer of danger. A plan was established to bring Morton in for questioning. The officer staked out the brew house, waiting for him to appear. As patrons filtered in for an evening of relaxation, Jake walked in with a nonchalant swagger, eager to embrace a carefree atmosphere. Lewis watched, concern spilling over into determination. As Morton took a seat at the bar, the detective nodded to his team, who swiftly moved in. When they approached, Jake's demeanor shifted. The carefree smirk faded into confusion, then slowly transitioned into uneasy defiance. "What's this about?" he challenged, searching their faces for information. He wasn't just being questioned as a witness. He was now a suspect in a murder investigation. Clara Thompson, was found dead just outside of town, Detective Lewis stated, his voice firm but controlled. Jake feigned ignorance, masking his slowly rising panic with bravado. "I didn't know her," he insisted, but Lewis was relentless, urging Morton to recount his whereabouts on the night of Clara's disappearance. As tension built, flashes of rage flickered across Morton's face, an expression that spoke volumes. What might initially manifest as innocent defensiveness now felt dangerously close to a confession through silence. Each evasive response became more revealing than his words. An unsettling sense that the truth lurked just beneath the surface, waiting for the moment it would surface in the light of scrutiny. The trial. Months passed since Jake Morton was arrested, and the quiet tension that had gripped Millfield morphed into a fierce anticipation as the trial date approached. The community rallied, filling the small courthouse to capacity, eager to bear witness to the events surrounding Clara Thompson's tragic death. Her absence had left a palpable void, one that the townspeople now sought to fill with justice. As the proceedings began, the courtroom buzzed with a mix of grief and determination. Detective Lewis sat near the front, his notes laid out before him like a roadmap to the truth. The prosecution presented a tightly knit case, weaving together witness testimony, including Marcus's haunting recounting of Clara's last moments, and the mounting evidence gathered from interviews and surveillance footage leading up to her murder. Clara's family filled the gallery, their tear-streaked faces revealing the raw pain of loss. Rachel Thompson, her sister, fought to maintain composure, focusing intently on the proceedings, searching for closure amidst the chaos. As the prosecutor displayed a timeline of events leading to Clara's fate, it became clear that Jake Morton had been the last man to see her alive. But as the defense took the floor, they attempted to dismantle the case piece by piece. They raised doubts about witness credibility, questioned the lack of physical evidence directly linking Morton to the crime scene, and argued that reasonable suspicion didn't equate to guilt. With every objection, Jake's expression hardened, a mask of defiance overshadowing the fear that lingered in his eyes. As the trial unfolded, Lewis was gripped by an unnerving sense of déjà vu. Despite the strong circumstantial case, he questioned whether the jury would absorb the gravity of Morton's history and the violent potential cloaked in his behavior. Though paragraphs of evidence felt weighty, the subtle art of persuasion could easily tip the scales of justice. The final day arrived, filled with the anxious energy of anticipation and mounting fears. As both sides prepared for their closing arguments, the atmosphere thickened, each participant aware they were not merely fighting for justice for Clara, but also for the soul of Millfield itself, its ability to heal from an injustice that had shattered the community. What would the verdict reveal about their town's resilience and the lengths they would go to recover from darkness? The aftermath. The verdict echoed through the silent courtroom like a death knell. As the judge read the jury's decision, guilt, relief, and rage collided in a maelstrom of emotions. Clara's family wept, tears of both sorrow and release spilling onto the polished wooden pews. Yet the tumultuous cry from the defense table told another story. Jake Morton, now a convicted murderer, stared blankly, the defiance draining from his features as the weight of his fate settled heavily on his shoulders. In the days that followed, Millfield found itself in a fragile state of recovery. The trial had exposed cracks in the community that many had chosen to ignore. Neighbors were faced with the harsh reality that uncertainty could sneak up on even the most idyllic towns. Though Morton was in custody, the troubling questions of how and why continued to linger, casting long shadows despite the jury's ruling. At the Book Nook, Clara's favorite haunt, a makeshift memorial emerged, consisting of flowers, photographs, lithographs, and the cherished books she had often championed. Patrons gathered to pay their respects, sharing stories of her kindness and the light she had brought into their lives. The library, once a beacon of hope and knowledge, transformed into a sanctuary where Clara's legacy would endure, serving as a reminder of the fragility of moments spent together. Detective Lewis, grappling with a mix of satisfaction and sorrow, found himself revisiting the barn where Clara's life ended. On quiet evenings, he would often wander there alone, reflecting on the choices that led to that fateful night. He had pursued justice relentlessly, but couldn't shake the cruel irony that while one life had been ended, another lay in ruin. The haunting landscape felt like a repository for the town's grief space, caught between the vivid vibrancy of the past and the stark realities of their present. As the seasons changed, Millfield slowly began to mend. The rhythms of daily life resumed, yet an undercurrent of resilience pulsed through the community. Neighbors sought to strengthen their bonds, refusing to let Clara's memory fade into the darkness. Annual gatherings transformed into vigils, where stories of her vibrancy echoed through the hearts of those who yearned to keep her spirit alive. She became a symbol of endurance, a reminder that in the face of darkness, love and support could form the strongest threads of a community. Though justice had been served, the scars of the tragedy remained. The people of Millfield embraced Clara's spirit, uniting in the shared commitment to preserve her legacy and foster a sanctuary where light could once again conquer darkness, allowing their town to heal, and promising that her story would never be forgotten. Reflection. As the sun dipped below the horizon on another crisp autumn evening, the town of Millfield exhaled a collective sigh. It had been nearly a year since Clara Thompson's tragic death, and although the specter of loss still loitered in the corners of their lives, a palpable sense of hope emerged from the heart of the community. Detective Lewis often found himself wandering through the streets, where familiar laughter mingled with the rustling of leaves, both equally poignant reminders of what they had lost and what they had fought to preserve. Clara's story had driven many to introspection, encouraging them to examine the fragility of human connections and the importance of vigilance in their community. At school assemblies, Clara's legacy was woven into discussions about kindness, the power of community support, and the significance of looking out for one another, especially in a world that often masks danger with anonymity. Reflecting on his relentless pursuit of justice, Lewis realized that the impact extended far beyond the courtroom. People had become more engaged in one another's lives, forging friendships that bound them closer, determined not to allow darkness to overshadow the light. The echoes of their shared grief had transformed into a harmonious chorus of resilience, a promise to honor Clara's memory by forever shining a light on what truly mattered: connection, compassion, and courage. In the shadows, Clara might have perished, but in their hearts she lived on, a guardian spirit guiding Millfield toward a brighter future, urging everyone to cherish the fleeting moments that stitch the fabric of life.